Gaming journalism is in a very rocky place because most writers have resorted to simply putting out hate pieces in order to bait readers in while providing little real substance, and viewership has declined for them. We've also heard that companies are toying with the idea of pushing for AI to pump out content, making these journos obsolete. And now there's new articles coming out saying that games media is failing and they're facing major layoffs behind the scenes. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon or supporter via YouTube memberships. Now, starting off with this GamesIndustry.biz article, why do games media layoffs keep happening? If you have been following the headlines, you may conclude that no one is reading very much these days. After all, layoffs in games media have been taking place with alarming frequency, with businesses often citing structure changes, supply chain issues, and very tough market environment. Yet amidst conversations around these layoffs, there's one game that keeps cropping up: Elden Ring, or to be specific, its pivotal role in introducing much needed traffic to a website. Now, they are acting like Elden Ring is the only game that has released in the past 2 years, that it is the savior for them, and that, it's the only game that people are really talking about, which is a little bit absurd, but it says we had gigantic traffic when Elden Ring came out. It was massive, and that had gone down a bit when there weren't as many big titles like that. This is absurd because there have been so many large games to release since then. Now, yes, I will completely agree that Elden Ring was massive when it came out, right? I mean, it changed the industry. It was a monumental event, but there have been plenty of other large titles like Hogwarts Legacy, which of course journalists kind of refuse to cover because they hate J.K. Rowling. We had God of War Ragnarok, which I know many people played, many people talked about. It was the closest game that we have had to an Elden Ring where it almost felt like a monumental event, but didn't quite hit those numbers. And then we had Tears of the Kingdom, right? Absolutely insane launch. It hit viewership records on sites like Twitch. I mean, everybody on social media was talking about it. So I don't really know what they're talking about when they said that there haven't been as many big titles like that, because there really have been. It says that combined with the pandemic, games coverage was in an interesting place because it's the big games that get the most traffic unless there's a breakout or crossover hit. Breakout, there we go, Hi-Fi Rush. That was a game that was shadow dropped one day and did absolutely fantastic. It says, though, layoffs are now endemic to the games media landscape in the broader journalism field, with many affected sites held together by a skeleton crew or operating with a masthead of newer writers. Just last month, Inverse laid off some of the members of its editorial team. In April, Waypoint, the game's vertical from Vice Media, was unceremoniously shut down alongside organization-wide layoffs in the parent company. Now, this is why I am constantly talking about video game journalists, because a lot of them are, fading into obscurity, right? A lot of these sites are shutting down, but they've really only caused this situation themselves. I don't like to laugh at people or mock people who are losing their jobs, but these people are losing their jobs because they're not really doing them, or they're not very good at them. Lately, I've had to talk a lot about political biases shoved into articles from these video game journalists. Just over the past few weeks, I've had to counter articles written about games like Final Fantasy XVI, Skullgirls, Baldur's Gate 3, and if these articles didn't have a political bias behind them, I wouldn't need to talk about them, but they do. Otherwise we would be talking about the content of a game itself, but instead, I spent time picking apart apart their trash articles, because if they don't get called out, people will fall for their clickbait and give them what they want, and that is the only way that they are surviving at this point, is hate bait. They are writing articles attacking the very people they need to read their trash, yet they still expect those people to show up time and time again when they need a guide or they need an opinion. Absolutely not. These people's thinking caps are not on straight. This article doesn't take into account that a lot of coverage honestly has not just gone away from freelance, but away from these legacy media type sites to social media. YouTubers and Twitch streamers exist now. Press releases are put out by developers and publishers, and they even do promotional deals with content creators directly, so they're not giving info just to legacy media anymore. They're going to social media influencers too, and that's going to hurt their bottom line, or the bottom line of any of these outlets that aren't breaking the news first anymore. And on top of that, when legacy media does cover it, it ends up being regurgitated by social media influencers with hopefully their own commentary or bias to the story, and that's how it gets disseminated, and the original source no longer gets clicks. And look, a lot of the time this can be a good thing. We have a lot of journalists, though, that are really not journalists. They're not giving you unbiased information themselves, which is the difference of a commentator, because a commentator like myself, you're not going to expect an unbiased view from me because I'm a commentator, not a journalist. Journos are supposed to tell the news without a bias, which they're not really doing anymore, and it's unfortunate, but they're not. It's why people have nicknames for them like hacktivists or Urnalists or whatever your favorite derogatory term is for them, because they're putting a spin on their stories, and you might as well get the news from someone who shares your bias instead of being forced to listen to theirs. This article also doesn't mention Gamergate. We all remember that. It stemmed from the discussion of ethics in gaming journalism. They, of course, tried to manipulate it into a different conversation about toxicity, but that's not what it originally was. It was about showing that gaming journalists have not only political biases, but they're being bought by companies. And recently, we heard that even Gamers Group put up a job ad igniting backlash in gaming and tech media, where they are basically looking for someone to be an AI assistant, someone who can put certain parameters into an AI. The AI can pump out articles and content, and then the person basically proofreads it, edits it, and then posts it. And, on one hand, I don't like AI. I don't want people's jobs to be replaced by AI, but at the same time, I can't defend gaming or entertainment journalists because they are all hacks. That is the issue, is that I can't defend people who are putting out articles specifically to upset people and to attack people. Again, as I've mentioned many times, they will go into articles and put their political or personal biases because ultimately they just want to be, political writers. They want to be political commentators, but they couldn't make it with actual legitimate political sites, so they just came into the gaming industry and kind of took it over, right? They're not writing articles really about video games. They're articles about politics. These people in gaming want to be political analysts, so everything has a slant to it, and it seems that the majority of these sites are left-leaning. Take it or leave it, but you can't deny it, and they shouldn't be. So yes, it does look like games media is facing some massive problems behind the scenes. They are facing some giant layoffs currently, and honestly, I can't say that I'm all that surprised. I'm not sad about it, and I'm definitely not going to miss them if the Kotakus, the Polygons, the Gamers all disappeared overnight. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this and of course found it important and informative, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.